Scalene muscles are one of those we often have problems with, and they are associated with hand numbness and neck instability and vertebral artery syndrome. Shortening of these muscles is encountered in almost all cervical spine disorders, but besides shortening, there can also be weakness of these muscles. But far more problems are caused by shortening to the first rib, to which the anterior and middle scalene muscles are attached. Anterior, middle, and posterior scalene. The peculiarity of these muscles is that they start from the transverse processes of the vertebrae. The transverse processes of the vertebrae. They are located on the side of the vertebral body and are attached to the first rib. The anterior and middle scalene muscles are attached to the first rib, and the posterior scalene muscle is attached to the second rib. The main function of these muscles, besides the fact that to some extent they participate in both the tilt and the turn, still, the main function of these muscles is the movement of the first and second ribs during inhalation. When these muscles contract, like any other, they bring their attachment points closer together, and in doing so, the anterior and middle scalene muscles lift the first rib, and the posterior scalene muscle lifts the second rib. Very often, these ribs are exactly what get fixed. They get fixed in the case when the function of the scalene muscles is impaired. Normally, the muscle should tense and relax. That is, it constantly changes its length. The work of a normal muscle, the latissimus muscle, the first rib will rise upwards. And when the back of it is shortened, this does not happen, then those parts of the skeleton to which this muscle is attached, they, accordingly, also do not change their position. They are fixed. And when the latissimus muscle is shortened, for example, when the front or middle latissimus muscle is shortened, the first rib will rise upwards. And when the back latissimus muscle is shortened, the second rib will rise upwards. Why is this bad? In addition to these ribs being excluded from movement, in addition to this also causing fixation of the first and second thoracic vertebrae, it will also cause compression of the brachial plexus. Another peculiarity of these muscles is that the nerves that are formed from the roots of the brachial plexus nerves come out between them. That is, practically the brachial plexus comes out here. It comes out here. And it comes out between the front and middle, and between the middle and back scalene muscles. And then all these nerves go to the arm. Here they further divide into the nerves of the arm itself. And when even one of these muscles is shortened, it causes compression of these nerves, which in turn causes pain in the arm and problems with the shoulder joint, shoulder blade periarthritis, and numbness in the arm. For example, why might the arm become numb at night? Turn the head. At that moment, there was a tension in the muscle and the pressure of some nerve increased. It caused the key here and all the innervation of the hand, the innervation of the shoulder. Here is the anterior scalene and the middle scalene muscle right between them. Here comes out the roots of the brachial plexus, forming the brachial plexus. And further, they go under the key. Here and all the innervation of the hand. Innervation of the shoulder. Everything comes from here. Everything comes out between the scalene muscles. And very often the shortening of the scalene muscle can so strongly compress some nerve that it can mimic the same pain as when biting the cervical spine. The same thing happens with the compression of the nerve root, but not biting here, where this nerve comes out, and a little further already between these two muscles. Another unpleasant thing that causes the shortening of the scalene muscles as these two muscles attach to the rib. When they shorten, they lift the rib up. That is, when they shorten, they will bring the places of their attachment closer together. And they will lift, first of all, the rib upwards. Secondly, they will change the position of the cervical vertebrae themselves, to which they are attached. And when lifting the first and second ribs upwards, the position of the first and second thoracic vertebrae will change accordingly. When the first rib is lifted upwards, the position of the bony process of the vertebra changes. He starts to puff out like this. And this hump bulge, which forms here, is a consequence of these two ribs starting to rise upwards due to the short scalene muscle. That is, visually, a hump appears here like this. Next, what can happen with the shortening of the scalene muscles? Normally, the body of the sternum is smooth, but with the fixation of the first two ribs, the shape of the sternum itself changes. This is called the handle of the sternum. This is the body of the sternum, and between them is a joint at the level of the second rib. When these two ribs are raised up, the position of the sternum handle changes. This happened due to the shortening of the back stair muscle. So in this way, when the first and the second ribs are raised, the position changes like this. That is, if you run along the sternum and here you will see the protruding second rib and the sternum handle, this happened due to the shortening of the back stair muscle. Most often, the front stair muscle shortens. In this case, palpation of it may cause pain. To find the front stair muscle, you need to put your hand right behind the sternocleidomastoid muscle. It's easy to find the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Turn your head to the side, lean forward a bit. That's when it starts to become palpable. And right behind it is the trapezius muscle itself. The first one you hit is the anterior trapezius muscle. Just beyond it is the middle trapezius muscle. And further still, right in front of the upper trapezius, is the posterior trapezius muscle. These are the three trapezius muscles. There are several ways to remove the shortening of this muscle. The first method, without separating all three muscles, when performing this exercise, the shortest of them will be stretched during this exercise. The shoulder blade should be pressed to the neck. The head is pulled up. You make a hand movement. Put your hand like this so that your shoulder does not rise up during the exercises. Look forward. Tilt your ear to your shoulder. Take yourself like this by the head. Fingers towards the ear and pull. Your head to the opposite shoulder, there will be a feeling of stretching on the side surface of the neck. In this case, several muscles are stretched here at once. Here the front, middle, back, scalene muscle is stretched. The muscle that lifts the shoulder blade and even part of the upper trapezius is stretched. But the main danger in the position, you will pull exactly the necessary muscles. These are the scalene muscles, lifting the shoulder blade. But if you turn your head slightly here, to the side, the position of the chin should not rise up, and you should not in percent of cases, as it is already weak, it cannot. This is the first exercise here. You as if not isolated stretch all these shoulder blade, but if you turn your head slightly here to the side, more effective exercise next. You find the front scalene muscle. Let's start with it. Put 4 fingers on it and turn your head exercise here. You as if not isolated stretch all these muscles. It can be applied, it can be started with, but a more effective exercise is next. You find the front scalene muscle. Let's start with it. Put 4 fingers on it and turn your head towards your elbow, looking at your elbow with your nose. And in this position, you tilt your head forward. you feel the movement of the muscle under your fingers, and you bend your head back, tilt forward and bend back again. Change the position of your fingers, change the position of your fingers, press on different parts of the muscle. There will be a slight discomfort, a slight feeling of tension. Then you change the position of your fingers, make a slight backward movement, and place them on the middle trapezius muscle. And you do the same movement from 5 to 10 repetitions. Then to the posterior trapezius muscle. That is, every movement you make is not only as if you are stretching the muscle to its full volume here, but you are also making a forward movement. So where your fingers are, that's exactly the part of the muscle you're stretching. And so you can stretch the front, middle, and back ladder muscles separately. Make a small forward before doing this exercise. Try to turn your head. Pay attention to the angle of rotation, how well the head turns, and do the same thing after this exercise. See, the angle of rotation will be greater if there is another version of this exercise from the other side, if it hurts. In such a version, you can sort of slide your fingers a little down the trapezius muscle. During this exercise, when you bend the opposite side, you slide down with your finger. If you feel that during this exercise the pain goes into your hand or you feel numbness in your hand, just reduce the intensity of the exercises. In this case, it is short for you, it stretches, and you feel it. Even more compression of the nerves than usual. There can also be not only shortening, but also hypertrophy of these muscles because they have to perform a foreign function, work instead of other muscles, in particular instead of the long neck extensor, about which and about several other muscles we will talk next time.